Good evening, and thank you for joining us for Dilla Time in Detroit. I'm Allison with Source Booksellers. We're a independent bookstore in Midtown Detroit, and we are so excited to support the release of Dilla Time. It is truly, truly part biography, part musicology, everything that that we would want to have to understand James Yancey even more here in Detroit. And we understand that he's definitely one of our own. Before I do the introductions, I just want to point out that the closed captions are at the bottom of your screen, and you can use them if you need them to choose your titles, how you'd like to see the titles. So that's there. And then when we get to question and answer, we're going to look for your questions in the Q&A. If they happen to be in the chat, we'll try to catch them, but we're going to try to focus on the Q&A. So I see that we're coming in, which is really cool. So today we're going to talk to the author of Dilla Time, Dan Charnas. He is a author of The Definitive History of the Hip Hop Business, The Big Payback. You might be familiar with that book, but he's also the author of Work Clean. And this is a book that applies chef techniques to almost any situation in life. So he's a very diverse writer. He's also the co-creator and executive director of the VH1 movie and TV series, The Breaks. He lives in Manhattan and is an associate professor at the Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music at NYU's Tesh School of the Arts. So if you want to know why that book is so good, just see who wrote it. Also, he'll be in conversation with our own Jessica Care Moore, the founder and CEO of More Black Press, executive producer of Black Women Rock, and the founder of the literacy-driven Just Care More Foundation. She's an internationally renowned poet, playwright, performance artist, and she lives and writes in a historic neighborhood here in Detroit with her son, King Thomas. And so let's bring them on up.
Hi,
What's up,
Allison.
Detroit?
Thanks for being here. I'm so excited to hear what you have.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, Detroit. Thank you, Jessica, for doing this with me.
I'm excited. I'm excited to get started. I'm really excited to promote your book because it's such a good book. I wore my D hat so I can match like the color of your book.
All right. Well, I got my coffee, and then I got my Stay Yes to Michigan coaster, so I'm good.
That poster behind you is gangster. I love it.
Yeah, it's great.
Awesome.
Isn't this beautiful? Right. All right. So I figure what we'll do is I'll start with a quick reading, right? About an 8-minute reading, but before I do, I want to sort of, there are 3 folks who are not here in the physical that I want to acknowledge. The first, obviously, is James DeWitt Yancey, who transitioned 16 years ago today. And, he's somebody who I knew only briefly, but he meant so much to his friends, his family, to the city of Detroit. Also, somebody who has been a bit of a guardian angel for my career and for the careers of so many other writers and thinkers, Greg Tate, who transitioned late last year. And then just yesterday, we got word that Betty Davis transitioned as well. And I know somebody who's very meaningful to those of us in the music community, but especially for the work that Jessica does.
Yeah, thank you.
So before I start the reading, let's just hold some silence for just a few seconds. Thank you. So I'm going to read a little bit from Dilla Time. And a while back, a couple weeks ago, there was an excerpt in the Detroit Metro Times that you can still read about how Slum Village, which was J Dilla, JD's first group, got signed to John, Sally, and RJ Rice's record label, Hoops. They tried to get Slum Village a deal with Warner Music in New York. And for John Sally, the money was not enough. He turned the deal down, and Warner gave a record deal instead to the now classic rap crew, Diggable Planets. So the section I'm about to read you is what happens after that Hoops deal falls through. All right, so here we go.
All right.
Out of high school, out of their Hoops contract, and out of money, James and T3 would often wake before dawn and drive in James' white Ford Ranger to one of the local temporary job services located beyond 8 Mile. One day they might be sent to Technicolor to label and package VHS videotapes. And on another, they might be in a warehouse assembling wood pallets with nail guns. That was their favorite job because they got to talk and listen to music, usually hard rock that the white guys who worked there played all day long. And there was a 7-Eleven around the corner where they could buy snacks. They were sent to a factory where they were given thick gloves and told to remove hot metal plates from a forge. T's gloves were too short, and he seared the flesh on his forearms. T got to drive around Detroit with a lady whose job it was to go to office buildings and water plants all day long. For their efforts, the young men usually came away with around $40 a day. James did fly with Cricket to Atlanta in 1992 for a music industry convention called Jack the Rapper, hoping to find some kind of connection. Nothing panned out. Perhaps it was foolish to dream of making a real career in hip hop, especially since no one from Detroit ever had. There'd been some local rap acts in the 1980s, Felix and Jarvis, Prince Vince, Chaos and Maestro, Isham, with spotty exposure outside Detroit. By the early 1990s, only 2 Michigan rap acts had made anything resembling a national impact. Awesome Dre and the Hardcore Committee, the first Detroit crew to get their video on Yo MTV Raps, and MC Breed, a rapper from Flint, 70 miles to the north, who scored a national radio hit with Ain't No Future in Your Frontin'. What little hip hop community Detroit fostered was centered around a Chinese restaurant on a back street of the emptied New Center neighborhood, where both Motown and General Motors had once made their headquarters. In a building that looked like a cross between a pagoda and an Art Deco drive-in diner, Stanley Hong's Mania Cafe hosted a weekly event promoted by local hip-hop inspired fashion designer Maurice Malone. The Rhythm Kitchen became ritual for the city's hip-hop outcasts, with MCs and DJs from the East Side and the West Side meeting in a place where conflicts were handled on the mic. Malone sold his merchandise and local rappers hawked their CDs and cassettes at the tables in the front. The restaurant sold high-caliber Chinese food and low-caliber malt liquor from the takeout counter in the back, while DJs spun sophisticated fare that other clubs in Detroit ignored, indie hip-hop from New York and dancehall reggae from Kingston on an impressive sound system. The Conant Gardens Collective came often. James and Frank, T3 and Batin, QD and Wajid. Crosstown collaborations were forged. Cricket fell in with the Westside DJ Andres Hernandez, who called himself DJ Dez. They became a duo called Rugrats, and Cricket brought Dez over to Amp Fiddler's basement to record. Crews from all over Detroit convened at the Rhythm Kitchen. Triplex, former Hoops acts Dopadelic and Rhythm Cartel, and the rapper Ronnie Watts, who called himself Fat Cat. But the most gregarious and relentless MC of all was Deshaun Holton, known to everyone in the room as Proof, a merciless battle rapper, an exhibitionist who'd do anything for a laugh, no matter how crazy, a people connector weaving between crews whom everyone soon referred to as the mayor. After the party, the action continued in the parking lot. James playing beats for Fat Cat, Cricket jumping onto a car and challenging all comers to battle. Within a couple of years, Maurice Malone was able to open a spot of his own on 7 Mile Road, and the Rhythm Kitchen regulars relocated to Malone's new hip-hop shop. By then, the community had become tightly bound and interconnected. The mayor, Proof, emceed the regular rap battles, backed by his friend from Jesu Catholic School, Kevin DJ Head Bell. DJ Head had dormed at Michigan State with Paul Rosenberg, who was trading his visions of a rap career for one in entertainment law. Rosenberg religiously attended the battles at the hip hop shop, where he would meet the young man who would become his first client, another of Proof's proteges, and like Paul, a white rapper of some skill, Marshall Mathers, who went by the MC name Eminem. The whole shop was managed by another Michigan State classmate of Head's and Rosenberg's, Jessica Care Moore, a lyricist and poet who often took to the stage to read her work. By then, another venue downtown had opened its doors to hip hop. On Friday nights, St. Andrews Hall had hosted 3 floors of fun with different DJs on each floor, upstairs for techno, the main room for hip hop, and the basement, nicknamed the shelter, for alternative rock. Crossing between genres was as easy as walking up or down a flight of steps. One night, however, the hip hop DJ punched the alternative rock DJ in the face and got ejected by security. The promoter pointed to a white kid from Lathrop Village, just north of Detroit, who'd been coming to the hall with a crate of his own records for the past few months in hopes that he might get 10 or 15 minutes on the turntables. Michael Buchanan became St. Andrews' resident hip-hop DJ thereafter. He took his stage name from a creature comfort of his, a pair of L.B. Evans black leather slippers with plush plaid insoles that he wore everywhere. He made a ritual performance out of it, sitting on the edge of the stage, taking his boots off, and putting his slippers on, like a hip-hop version of Mr. Rogers. The crowd roared, "Aw, shit, DJ House Shoes about to get on." Within Detroit's small but thriving hip-hop scene, James DeWitt Yancey became known as John Doe, producer of first-rate beats. He recorded tracks for Paul Rosenberg's Rhythm Cartel at both Amp Fiddlers and at Hoops. He helped Jessica Care Moore experiment with putting her poetry over beats. Cricket's pal, DJ Dez, formed a new crew, the NSE for the Inner Circle, and James produced the B-side for their first locally distributed single. James laid a few tracks for Proof, and together they conspired to form a new duo, Funky Cowboys, Detroit's best producer and best MC. They even got matching FC tattoos to seal the deal. Proof, in turn, introduced James to DJ Head, Rosenberg's and Moore's classmate at Michigan State, who had an EMU SB1200 drum machine that he had purchased by splitting the $1,500 cost between 2 credit cards. James and Head became friendly and often went record shopping together, a mutual quest for the raw materials with which to make new beats, sometimes driving as far as Ann Arbor, 30 miles west of Detroit, to dig for used jazz vinyl at stores like PJ's, then driving back to Head's parents' West Side basement to put them to use. It was there one evening that Proof, ever the competitor, got an idea. Let's do a beat battle. It was the producer's version of the MC battles he hosted at the hip hop shop. He laid out the rules. You get 5 records and 20 minutes to make your beat. Only one of them can be a drum record, meaning one of the growing crop of bootleg compilations of raw breakbeats. Your opponent picks your records, and that way everyone is challenged and no one has the same music. James reveled in these battles, spending hours upon hours in Head's basement trying to make the best beats on the fly. James and Proof became almost sanctimonious about the format's utility. If you were going to be a professional, if you were going to work with artists in the studio for real, you had to be able to do it well and quickly and on call. What James put himself through in Head's basement was a kind of beat-making boot camp, during which he became so fluent and so swift that his skill would seem almost miraculous, even to fellow producers.
So like I don't know if anyone's told you this yet, but so your book made me cry. I cry. It's like reading it for me, because it's such a personal experience. I was reliving my childhood. We were kids.
Yeah.
I was, because you forget your life ends up being so many other things in so many other spaces.
Right.
But I moved to Brooklyn in 1995, And I didn't know that, JD also had a damn pickup truck. So I drove my purple Ford pickup truck. I had the same, I had a Ranger. What the fuck? We all had Rangers. So I had a purple
Well,
Ford.
Ford.
It was Ford, right? It was like, it's like an Escort with some extra stuff in the back. Like that's what the
Yeah.
Ranger was. It's not really a real pickup truck, but it was a truck, you needed some extra stuff in the back. So that's what I drove to Brooklyn. And Proof was actually supposed to drive me to Brooklyn when I moved to New York. I packed up all my stuff at the last minute, very, very Proof style. He bailed. And so my girlfriend ended up driving. He was like,
Yeah.
at the last minute, like, yeah, I can't go, whatever. But yeah, I had to stop a couple of times. And I just want to say that I'm thankful that you included me, because there's a lot more other people that could be in the book besides me. I mean, I was around, and I'm definitely and absolutely connected to every person in this book and that story and the hip hop. I'm there. Also, Yamini is another sister. I have to mention Yamini, who also helped me run the hip hop shop as well.
Right.
And then two DJs that were also a big part of hip hop shop that I don't think I heard them mention was DJ Sabotage and DJ Row. Row and Sabotage were absolutely there just as much as Head, and so they were also DJs at the Rhythm Kitchen.
Right.
When Maurice Malone wasn't, because Maurice used to DJ too. I don't know why Maurice was spinning, but Maurice used to spin as well. It's funny. We were like, "You're not a DJ," but he was actually a DJ as well. And so we lived in the hip hop shop. We lived in the Rhythm Kitchen, like in Stanley's, like this Chinese food restaurant. It's just, I love how you talk about it, because people don't understand how hip hop happened in Detroit. Like, we decided that we were going to be a part of hip hop culture, right? And because we had cars, like I remember us being in St. Andrews, and like the guys had backpacks, but we all had cars. Like, we didn't really have to have a backpack because we weren't on trains. Like, we weren't going from Brooklyn to Harlem. We were actually, a lot of us had cars, and we came with somebody's car, and we could have left our stuff in the trunk. But some of it was emulation. Like, we were emulating what we thought hip hop looked like. But we also were very much edgier because being from Detroit, right? Because being from this place that isn't an easy place to be from, especially if you're a little different, So it was like, so we were kind of like, not outcasts, but like we wanted to be. Like, we knew there was something. And I know that's what I'm saying. Like, JD knew that he was connected. Maybe he didn't know, but it's unbelievable to me that he goes to New York, and like the Soulquarians are all my people.
Right.
Like, those, we get connected to the same people. We go our own. I went to New York in '95, and like you mentioned in the book, like him and Proof and Row and all them, Sabotage, were all at my going away party.
Right.
They didn't move to New York yet. I left before they got there, and then to watch his life, and the intertwinings of it all. I was on the open mic scene with Erykah Badu. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Talib was working at Incru Books when I met him, and I met him with Jacess from Dopadelic. That's who brought me to Talib at Incru Books. So Detroiter, Jacess brought me. Said, you got to go to this bookstore. You got to meet my brother Talib. So I meet Talib through Jacess. And so we, this Detroit energy is an interesting thing, but I think also, like, just like JD, I also knew that the world was bigger than just like being from went to Cody and from the West Side, and that I was a poet. I was a poet on that, in the middle of that hip hop culture, very male dominant MC. Those battles, like what Prue was doing, I was like, I wasn't doing that. I was there, but I was like, move, I'm about to do a poem. I was always inserting my feminine energy, and it's so deep. And the way that you talk about the polyrhythmic, breakdown of like connecting Dilla to Africa and to the African continent, and polyrhythm, and it's genius work. It really is. And it's important that like you're taking this young brother from the East Side who was just using what he had. Right? I tell my son, he's got everything, Mac and Logic, and he's still like, it's not enough stuff. I'm like, Dilla was taking these cassettes, and he was like stripping them, and doing things that nobody else was doing.
Right.
But in Detroit, as an artist, that's what makes you a Detroit artist. That's what made his sound, is that he didn't have all the tools. So you use what the hell you have to make something great, right? And I love how you really documented that reality, because that's how it is for all of us in Detroit. It's still like that, because that's what keeps the work sounding different. Like when I moved to New York in '95, I sounded different than all those New York poets with 25 million cafes to read their work, to go to,
Right.
they had the New Eurekan, the Brooklyn Moon, they had all these spaces and culture around it. And I was like at the hip hop shop trying to get in like a double dutch. You know what I'm saying? Right? All
Yes.
these
Yeah.
these hip hoppers like, listen, can I get on the mic? Can I get on the mic? That was me. I'm the like the little baby, you know, I'm the hip hop girl, the poet, though, not wanting to be an MC, but definitely a poet in that world and documenting it with my eyes and writing about it later in later books.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just thank you for like putting him in the line of genius and connecting him to African culture. And the grid is just like how you, if you could talk about the grid. I mean, I
Yeah.
love the way you broke down the grid and talked about it in the book.
Oh, I will do that, but I want to go back to what you were saying about you being in the book. I mean, you know, as a storyteller and a writer, when you put a character, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, it's still a narrative. The
Yeah.
character has to be there for a reason. And of course, as an author, I want to inscribe everybody in the community, right? And I tried to, you know, get
Yes.
as many of James' key people as possible.
Yes.
The reason that Jessica Care Moore needed to be in this book is you actually just said it. It was, I wanted to show how broad the community was, even though it's in Detroit, even though it's far from New York and LA,
Yeah.
that there were other artistic people in Detroit who were going to, you were guys were going to do this. You see each other for the last time in, I think, 95, right? When you go,
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
And then you don't, and then there's this moment, you're all on your separate journeys. And then you meet again in the middle of the book, right? When
Bananas.
you walk into a recording studio. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm going to get to the grid, but I want you to just tell that
Yeah.
story because that's important.
I hadn't seen JD in years. You know, I knew
Yeah.
that he had found some of my friends that I was friends with. He was producing. I knew he was producing with Tribe, all the people that I had connected to when I came to New York. And in a very organic way, I became a part of that hip hop culture scene. I was there. Me and Common had met. I knew him from a Black girl named Betty. I was in that first video with Rashid on the corner with that with Black Star. I was, you know, I was there for when Black Star got their deal. I was friends with Dante and Talib, and so yeah, at that time I was used to, I was working with Nas. I'm not even sure if that's where I was when we met, if I was in the studio with Nas when I saw JD improve, but I ran into that. And it was just the most beautiful thing because I saw him and I saw him I think he was just sitting around the corner and all I saw was this black mink coat. You know, it was just this black, and he was like swallowed up by the coat. The coat was so much, he was so little. He was such a petite brother. It was this black, and he, you know, it's funny because people I read in the book, like all those personalities, I know, so I never dated him. So all he with me,
Right.
constant, sweet. He was the most sweetest, high, soft spoken around me, very kind, very loving, beautiful smile. That's all I know of him. I don't know any person else. That is the person that I know. And he saw me, his face lit up. I gave him a huge hug and I was like, you saw Detroit. Like, you know, like no matter what, I was like, that's some Detroit shit, a fucking black mink coat. I was like, and I understood what that meant. You know what I mean? Like here you are, son around all this New York, you know, and I see he's got like a little more money, some success. And I knew it was happening, but to see it and then Proof was just wild as he was. You know, and Proof was the same. Proof looked the same no matter what. When he was on tour with Eminem, he looked the same as he did at the hip hop shop. I was like, maybe he had a different shirt on, but he was just Proof.
Yeah.
But JD, I could see the fame. I could see that he's looked successful, but his energy towards me was exactly the same. And he knew what I've been doing. Like so we were reconnecting, but at the same time, it wasn't like, let's connect. Okay, here's my number and I'm going to come. It was just like, I'm proud of you. I see you, brother. I was living in New York.
Yeah.
I was in the middle of it at that point. I recorded with Nas in 99. I think that's when the album came out. Yeah, it was Nostradamus was 99. And so I was just doing, and I had won the Apollo. They were all going crazy. You know what I mean? Because they came to my going away party. I won the Apollo 5 months later. Yeah, so
people still talk about your going away party. Like I've heard it from at least 4 different people. The going away party.
I went to New York. Go to my going away party. It was a big deal because you know I had no reason to go. There wasn't a record deal waiting on me. There wasn't like, oh, you're gonna be famous if you go to New York. I was just I had a show called Just Kicking It. So I was like interviewing Dopedelic, interviewing like Terry Dwyer. I was bringing hip hop people, Maurice Malone.
Yeah.
I was documenting the scene. So I was like the journalist poet of the scene that was like documenting what was happening. And I mean, I wrote in what I have a poem in God is Not an American, in my book, God is Not an American, about Proof battling Busta Rhymes at St. Andrews Hall. And when he was with Leaders of the New School and he won. Like
Ha.
destroyed him. He destroyed him. I'll never forget. I was there. And then there's like lots of controversy around it because people tell me it was somebody else. It wasn't Proof. I was like, what? Proof was my friend. I was like, I'm pretty sure that was Proof. Maybe it was somebody else, but I saw Proof battling him.
Right.
But there's like, I mean, it's deep. I'm not close with, and Paul Rosenberg was my first lawyer. He was my lawyer, my first lawyer.
That's something we didn't go over in our interview.
Paul
That
Rosenberg,
detail would have made the book.
I said Paul Bunyan was my first lawyer.
Wow.
He'll tell you that. He was my lawyer. He negotiated my recording with a group called Silent Poets. They're Japanese producers, and me and Ursula Rucker on the album. And he was the one that negotiated my contract for. I didn't know any other lawyers. I was like, wait, Paul Bunyan's a lawyer. And so and we just moved into.
But that Michigan State posse. I mean, Kelly L. Carter, who was the covered hip hop for the Detroit Free Press. She also went. I think it was after y'all, but yeah, she.
Okay.
Kelly Carter was
Jason
there.
Staten, like Jason Staten was there too, and Jason Staten who broke Wu-Tang. Hello in Detroit.
Yep. And Mr. Monotone, DJ Tony Tone, right?
Hey, Tony Tone. Is Tony Tone on here? I thought I saw him come on. I think he might be participating. I hope he is.
I hope so.
Another great DJ who I love dearly. You know what I mean? And so there's so much genius in that circle.
Right.
And what's really beautiful about us is that is that nobody gives it to us, Dan, in Detroit. And that this book, Dilla Time, is giving it to us. Like it's actually like putting our time when we thought that we were just being kids and we were just being creatives. I mean, I came out of public high school. It wasn't like all these access to, we didn't have students. These kids have so much more than what we had, and they still don't have enough. But we really were we were a family. I mean, I'm still friends with those people. These are people I've known my entire life, like DJ Head. I love him. I love Des, you know what I mean? And we've worked together now as adults. We work together in our 30s, in our 40s, you know what I mean? Like we're grown people with kids.
It's good to be grown up, I mean, it's good. It's good to be grown. Yeah, I guess, in a way, I almost feel wistful about the Detroit hip hop scene in the 90s because in a way, I missed it. I was in Los Angeles at the time working for Rick Rubin, making that record over there. But before that, I was in New York and this was after like the Latin Quarter time, but the building and car wash. And it was like New York's hip hop community was still small, thriving, but small. So I was at car wash when Tribe Called Quest did their very first performance as a group. Like,
what year was that?
That was like sometime in 1990, 89 or 90.
Okay.
It was right when People's Instinctive Travels came out. But Detroit, hearing the stories of Rhythm Kitchen and Hip Hop Shop just reminded me so much of my own youth in hip hop that I felt a little romantic about it. And it is romantic.
It is romantic. I mean, Tribe, I was at Michigan State, 89, and like that was the soundtrack. Like Low End Theory was the soundtrack of my life. Like Tribe Called Quest, that shit was like that. And we were feeling like, because a lot of West Coast rap was connected to Detroit. We loved NWA in Detroit. Yeah. We loved Snoop, like that sound of the West Coast because we got cars, because of the way that we get down, because of the way we dress and our swagger. I got why the connection to like the West Coast energy.
Yeah, but also P-Funk came from Detroit. So
come on now.
Right.
Yeah, that's a whole. We rock and roll too, and we P-Funk all day. You know what I mean? A little bit, but we were definitely like the wayward kids, the hip hop kids, which we were different and a lot of intelligence. Like, I'm talking about Baten. I was close to Baten. He was a good friend of mine, and so we used to like practice meditating. Like these are things that later you might get it, but like nobody was giving us like meditation, talking about chakras. Like we were doing all this self-work of like we use hip-hop to find Islam, like, and that's a big deal. Like Islam and hip-hop are very connected in the Detroit community. Maurice Malone was Muslim, Hassan Mausi, It was a dancer and promoter of the hip hop shop. You know, these are Hassan and Theo, you know, who we know as Kalfani now. These are two that came out of the hip hop scene. They danced for Mandela when Mandela came to Detroit
Oh
to
my
speak
God.
at Tiger Stadium. So here's two of our hip hop babies coming who came out of our scene, dancers dancing for Mandela. So we had something, there's something in the water, something going on where we knew that we were doing something that was connected, something bigger than even who we were at the time.
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a book that's why we're excited about it. Why when you're talking to Piper, why we're like, this is the Bible. This needs to be, because this book has to be taught.
Yeah.
Because people don't know this history. And
Yeah.
I mean, Dilla is one man, but there were a lot of other people. I love that you talked about Wajid. I know T3, but I liked hearing the story of how they met in high school.
Yeah.
That story is so amazing for my son who's 15, who makes me. That's why I'm like, King, you're reading this book. You have to hear what you can do with your friends.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be easy to work with your friends, and you might fall out and have
Yeah.
moments. But JD came back. He didn't forget about them. You know, Slum Village eventually finally got their moment that they
Yeah.
deserve. These
Yeah.
talented brothers, man. Yeah,
So you asked about the grid.
I did.
And it's, I'll try to condense it to a real short story, but I sent my first trip I'm a New Yorker by birth. But my first trip to Detroit was in 1999 to work with JD. I was an executive working for Rick Rubin out in the West Coast. My colleague and artist Chino XL and I came to Detroit seeking beats from JD, you know, like my favorite producer. And, you know, we called the house, got the directions from my Dukes, drove out to Conant Gardens. Our first time ever in the state, in the city. Go down to the basement. Common Sense is down there. What's Common Sense doing here? Because he was still Common Sense to me.
Still Common Sense, right? Yeah.
And you know, we went to the studio, laid a couple of tracks, and we're in Detroit for 3 days. But the crazy thing is, I brought my camera to Detroit with me, but I only took pictures of us at the Motown Museum because I didn't realize, because I wasn't there to document anything. I was there as a tourist, right? It had been 7 years since I wrote for The Source.
Wow.
So I wasn't thinking of myself as a journalist at that point.
Deep.
But the crazy thing is I'm snapping pictures at the Motown Museum when all the time I'm in the basement, there's a piece of music history that's even more present that I'm just like not.
Wow. What was kind of working on Like Water for Chocolate? Was that the Like Water for Chocolate time?
Oh, yeah. That was exactly then.
That's the best album.
August of 1999.
Yeah, it's my favorite. It's for a long time.
So it would be many, many years over the next few years. The rhythmic genius of what he was doing at the time was dawning on me. And the way that I express it to my students, I actually taught a class on J Dilla at NYU, and we brought all 20 students to Detroit. Yeah, field trip, 3 days. Yeah.
Oh, what a great professor. Yes, professor. Work.
And but you know who the real professor was on that trip? Jamon Jordan.
Oh, okay, of course.
Yeah, he took us right. So he took us all around. And so the way I describe it to my students is, you know, we'd had in our popular music vocabulary, in popular music, this idea of straight time, which is even beats, and swing time, which is uneven beats. Yes. Straight time comes to us from the European tradition. Swing time is an African American invention that is a retention of African polyrhythm. And we've had straight and swung, or the continuum between the two for the last 100 years. But what JD did in a basement in Detroit on a drum machine was find a way to slam those two time fields together and put them in conflict. And that's that jerky, conflicted, limping, lurching, loping, drunken feeling. But it's not just it's not sloppy, it's intentional.
It's intentional.
And that it is a third time field, I argue, right? So that is where the grid comes in, because when you look at the grid plan of Detroit, it's a map of all the conflicts that have shaped this place. Like it started with, you know, if you look at Campus Martius, you see this a remnant of this triangular grid based on threes. And then you see this other grid coming into it that's based on twos, but they're
Yeah.
kind of offset. And
Yes.
it doesn't, like, you look at it, it looks like a broken, shattered glass. It's a conflicted polyrhythm.
Yes.
It's a conflicted,
Mhm.
syncopated polyrhythm. And James Yancey was born right in that place. And
Oof.
that
Oof.
that
And
map,
that's why. And that's why.
right, that map of downtown Detroit looks like a JD beat feels.
Oh,
So that was, I needed a way to teach music theory and also teach the history of Detroit. And luckily they meshed. So I'm trying to teach music
Hmm.
theory and the history of Detroit by that grid. So yeah.
Dan, so I want to ask you this, because why I get excited, because I'm a super nerd, is because I would love for you to apply that, you know, to language. And so that, because I feel like that's the difference, right? Why I got overwhelmed by you telling Dilla's story this way is because I feel like I was also born in this grid, right? And
Right.
that how do you go, um, how do you go, this brother from the East Side, go and do that to Tribe Called Quest, right? How do you blow the minds of Mos and Talib and Erica's like, I need a J Dilla beat. Like, these are some of the most, in my opinion, my genius friends from the 90s hip hop era in New York City. How did you catch that ear? And it's because, you know, yeah, like that thing, because I know I did the same thing in 5 months, and how quickly the way you talk about his watching Ali Shahi Muhammad, like, you know, watching how he goes to get the album and does it and then walks away. And that's some Detroit shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's some very, like, that's very, I had to call it pimping, but that's like some, like, you know what I mean? Oh, you go,
Yeah.
I don't need all day. Because you know what? We don't have all day to do it. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
we got to get this work, the work ethic, like his work ethic, how he gets down. That's how I get down. That's how Detroit artists get down. Like, the work ethic is
The
like,
work ethic.
it's
I'll
there.
never forget in that Dilla class, we were at one of the restaurants in Hamtramck. It might have been Polish Village. I don't know. I remember what it was,
Right.
but you know, we wanted to give the New Yorkers an experience of Hamtramck, right?
Okay.
So, which they also had to correctly pronounce by the end of the class, or they couldn't graduate.
Hamtramck.
Yeah. So Awesome Dre came
Awesome
in
Dre.
to talk to us,
Oh,
but he
that's-
came in his work boots, and I'm like, that's, you know. And
Come
listen, I'm lucky enough that I married into a family from Detroit, and my wife always says, like, that it's that work ethic that, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's that, you know, she talked about sort of the symbology of the end of that movie 8 Mile, Rosenberg's movie, where M at the end says, you know, I'm going to work. I got to go to work.
Yes. Well, that's all we know, because our families come from working class households, right? And so that's all we know. We're artists, but we know it's not, like, it wasn't interesting in 90 for my family until they were like, well, what do you do? We know you write poetry, but what is your job?
Yeah.
You know? So I had to figure out what my job was. So my job became, I'm gonna start a publishing house called More Black Press, and I'm gonna publish all the New York poets, because somebody ain't doing their job in that way. I had to find the thing that I do, because just having the gift of being able to make art wasn't necessarily work, right? So I had to create work, because even in my own head, I have to work. Like, I don't even know how to just be a poet. I create institutions. So I build now Black Women Rock. I have to do things that are bigger than just me.
Right.
And that's what Dilla did.
Structures. Yeah.
Yeah, we need structure. Even if it's but I have to run it. I can't work for nobody. You know what I mean? I can't go get a job, but I do have to find out. I do have to have some structure that says, okay, I have something to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I don't know. This is really important. This piece is like really important. And congratulations for being on New York Times bestseller list.
Thank you. It's kind of it's surreal, you know, it's really surreal.
It's deserved.
You know, I come from a business, you know, the hip hop business. I spent, you know, 15 years, maybe even more than that, in it. And, you know, there's this culture of sort of blaming the label or whatever. But I gotta say, as an artist signed to a book label,
Yeah,
my publisher did something that had never been done for James Yancey in his lifetime. They took a billboard on I-75 near the Russell Industrial Center, and you can see that billboard right there.
I posted it. It's so
It's
exciting.
crazy.
It's crazy. They did, if I'm not mistaken, they did Vibrate Higher. They did Talib's book. You have the same publisher.
Yeah, they did. They absolutely did. So there's a commitment there, which I really adore. And it's just, I think they were like me, we wanted to give something to Detroit and spend extra, attention and resources on Detroit. And it's just this Omicron thing. I would be there right now, but I will be there.
You will be here. And your book
will.
needs to be in schools. My friend is the principal of Detroit School of the Arts, and she wants the book.
Oh, man.
So she wants
That's
it
great.
for her music students. So whatever, I think she has a couple hundred music majors over there.
Yeah.
So you gotta let me know how to figure that out, because I've already talked about it. And I was like, the kids need to be reading this because they need to see how this brother affected the entire world from a little crib on the east side. Make everybody come to the basement. That's my favorite part of the book is that they had to bring their New York ass in Chicago Common had to come to the basement on the east side and wait.
You make me think of something that I was talking with Piper about earlier, and that is that this book, it's like, you do a work, Jessica, and I know that you've done work, and then it's only after you've done the work that you actually can see into it even a bit more. Yes. So for me, having this thing now is here, like, oh, this is a book about a child, right? And then it suddenly occurs to me, that is why, for example, Maureen Yancey has been doing, things with the iterations of her foundation work, with getting Pershing High, the music lab, and Piper and Jocelyn Ninneman before her working on the Dilla Youth Days, and it's been all about the kids. And I realized that for James Yancey, we could have lost James. Like, she and DeWitt, were like lucky enough to have that acceptance from Davis High School that he could do that. And they had to scramble for different reasons. Like, thank God Kim Weston was doing the Festival of the Arts, because and this is a city that has been, like lots of cities across the country, deprived, criminally deprived of resources. So it's about that. And I think that's probably why, as an author, I also tried to pay attention to his daughters, because that is one thing in our discourse about Dilla. Sadly, we forget that he has two daughters. And they're here and they're thriving, and that's important. And that's again, we're talking about lineage.
Having some daughters as legacy is a beautiful thing. Yeah.
So we can see the lineage from the moment that Red Cornish steps off a train in 1913 to take a job at Ford to his daughter flying off to college.
And how you tell the story of their parents in the beginning is very, 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 very beautiful. How they came together, and it wasn't just this easy fairy tale thing.
No, nothing is.
Nothing is. But they made that child and that music, and how his dad would play him as an instrument as a little baby. I believe in all these things, that you're putting these things into your children early. I don't think it's by accident that he became who he is. And all that music that's in his DNA, that I think you said he had 50 years worth of music, in his body already. And I don't think, I understand what that means, because you get things through spirit, and you get things because you come from these working class parents,
right?
In Detroit, who never, a lot of them had never even seen the world, but they want you to see it. They want you to see it. And so my parents had never seen the world. My daddy, construction worker, my mother worked for Michigan Bell. But something happened and that, my mother had books in the house. So I read all her books. And so that's why I could read well, so I could learn how to write. There's one Q&A, and it's a fun one too. Oh, I guess.
So it's 7:45. So I guess, Allison, are we supposed to move to Q&A at this point?
Me and Dan could just keep on talking.
We could.
Yeah. And I want to also, that's a you question.
All right, well, I'll do the first one.
Yeah, you do that one.
So the question from Zachary is top 5 personal Dilla beats. I love his remixes. I think that his remixes are so important, and they showcase talents that you don't normally see from him, like singing and harmonic work and melodic work and songwriting. So they are, very quickly, his remix of the song Eve for Spacek, his remix of Lucy Pearl's Without You, his remix of Sometimes by the Brand New Heavies, his remix of Mood's Secret of the Sand, and his remix of, I'll just say Obligato by Jack McDuff. All those things are,
But listen to all those artists that you just named. What's amazing to me is that how he was in a very short period of time able to work in the level that he worked and all the discography that he left behind.
Yeah.
Like how many years is that in,
That's
you know what I
only
mean?
12 years, like not a long time.
That's
But
wild.
all he did was work. All he did was work and go to the titty bar.
Go to titty bar.
Right. He didn't want to, he was offered a European tour in 1999 and he didn't want to go. He told his manager, Tim Maynard, that he lost his passport, so he didn't have to go.
He didn't want to go.
And they had to drag him. To Europe.
There was another tour that he didn't want to go to either. And it was like the Roots were on, like a whole thing.
Okay, Player Tour.
Yeah.
But the irony for James is that only after he got sick, did he realize the value of travel. He began to enjoy it. It's just his body couldn't handle it anymore. Yeah.
I have to tell you something true, that I couldn't really read past his death. It was hard. Like after that, I was kind of like, I have to read it. I have to continue because I know there is life after life and all that. And I've been around for the afterlife. I've been around people who were influenced by him. I've been to Dilla Days and I've hosted some and all of that. I know met his daughters. I bought earrings from them. Yeah, just, I know. But it was hard. Like when I got to that ending point, I was like, that's it, he's gone? Because he was gone. It's so fast. Like even the books. Yeah, it was fast. I was like, wait, he got sick, and I was like, wait, he's gone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there are people, you included, who are having emotional difficulty reading the book, and I completely understand that. I mean, one of my early readers was Amir Questlove Thompson, and Questlove, he's tender, and so he was like, he said he was racing through the first part of the book, and then it got slower and slower and slower as the inevitable happened. Yeah, and I totally understand that. It was hard to write. It was hard to write.
There too, that we lost Proof and by 10. I mean, that's all of those are my friends. You know what I mean? It's like they're all gone and they're young, and they would have still been young right now. They would have just been middle-aged hip hop guys. They would have been legends walking around. And so, you're reading it and you're like, wait, these are my friends that are no longer here. But they all don't have their own books. You know what I mean? And so that's why it meant a lot, to be honest. Like to see my name in there. The peripheral. It doesn't. And I'm not a rapper. So I do appreciate being a part of it, because there's painters and dancers and all kinds of people that are connected to hip hop that don't get acknowledged when they're telling these stories. Right. Even in New York City, I was definitely a part of the hip hop scene there in New York City. I was connected to, but I'm not always talked about in the same sentence with, right? I remember Talib Kweli came on and had to tell a journalist, Jessica is my peer. You know what I mean? It's like, we came up together.
Wow.
He was working at a bookstore when I met him. He wasn't famous. And me and Dante used to jump the turnstiles in the train in Brooklyn together. So he was doing like Cosby Mysteries, and he had just maybe done like the De La Soul album. No, Bush Babies, like the Bush Babies thing. So not like they are now.
We got Allison's let us know we got 2 more questions here.
Okay.
So do you see the correlation to Detroit techno? I want to take that question and ask you about it, because one of the questions I did ask a lot was, what determined whether a young Detroiter would gravitate towards techno and like the JIT and all that, or go hip hop and be doing the East Coast stomp and all that? So from your perspective, what is that?
I was at the techno parties too. I mean, I am underground resistance. I went to all of it
Right.
because the shelter and 1515 Broadway, they, that energy was connected to me. It
Yeah.
was still a rebellion music. It
Yeah.
wasn't the music, it wasn't the popular club, it wasn't the East Side Club. It was like, it was where everybody wasn't. But I mean, but the hip hop crowd that I was around, we were around Mike Banks. We knew who the Wizard was. We knew who Jeff Mills was. Like, that was a part of, I don't know, to me the scenes were connected. They were different. We were a little younger. The techno people are older than us, right? Like Mike Banks, Kevin Saunderson, Derek May, all them cats, they got us by about 10 years. So they techno guys were a little older. They were like,
Right.
they're like, those guys are almost 60 years old now. So we were young, like we were like the young hip hop ones. Oh, I know I was at them, but I was at the techno part. Underground resistance is a part of my DNA. Like the way that they got down, not showing their faces, they were gritty, and it was very black. Like people, we understood that techno was also a black music. We didn't think it was white kids' music. It was like black as hell, and it was like that same energy of hip hop for me. That assembly line,
Yeah.
mentality of work. That's in
Yeah.
techno.
You know, Jessica, that was my learning. That's what I learned as a New Yorker about
Yeah,
Detroit. Is that in New York, there was real contention between house and hip hop. Like you did not do both, but in Detroit, people did both.
and we mix the DJs played both too.
Yeah.
The DJs
Yeah.
would mix it. I mean, you get hip hop's club. They throwing some house, and we were dancing some house music.
Right.
House though, house is like deep house. That music is black music. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so yeah, I didn't feel a disconnect. And just because we're it's still that outside culture. So the
Yeah.
outside culture people are gonna know each other.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I see the connection completely.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Okay, we got more questions here. Here's a quick one. Is there a digital copy of Got Till It's Gone JD Revenge Mix? Well, I don't have one, but I'm sure that one exists because it was probably put out on CD. Maybe a local DJ like Dez or Tony Tone has one. I'm sure they do.
Right.
If JD were still alive today, what do you think his career would look like? What else would he have ventured into? I have something that I usually say to
Yeah.
this question because it is a question that comes up,
Yeah.
and that is, I'm sure he would have preferred to be alive than,
Come on.
I mean, uh, to sort of be memorialized in the way that he's being memorialized now. And if he had lived, I don't know. I feel like his he was change. He
Yeah.
was always changing. He was always trying to, he was, people call him humble, but
Hmm.
I don't think he was humble. I think he was quiet.
He
I
was
think he was very competitive. I think that he was trying to outrun his competition.
Mm-hmm.
And he did have a certain ambition, but he wasn't so focused on the success part of it that he was never afraid to abandon what he had done because he had complete faith that he knew he could do something else. Who has that? I certainly don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta psych myself up just to get out of bed in the morning. This guy's like, yep, I'm not gonna, I invented a whole style that
Mm.
everybody is imitating now, and I'm not gonna do that anymore. I'm gonna do something else. Who
I mean,
does that?
what else he would have ventured into it? But I think he would have been. I mean, he would have been working with like Kendrick. He'd been still working with that crew of So Queer, and he's still
Yeah.
making music. I think he would have, maybe done music installation work with his work,
Yeah.
taking over like buildings and
Yeah.
taking his work and turning it, and we could walk through his work. I don't. Yeah, I think it's limitless. But the things when people die young like that, like that's the genius in it. Like you really can't even imagine like what could have happened. Like what if Jimmy would have been alive, Jimi Hendrix, or you don't know. But the body of work that he left behind is a lifetime of work.
And
It's
maybe
a,
there's some foresight in it too. Like there's a sense that maybe there was some sort of innate sense of I have to use every minute I have because I'm not going to have much time. Maybe,
I have a line of a poem that says about Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye died the night before his birth is why I hurry.
Mhm.
Like, and so there's an urgency that I've always, Greg Tate talked about. They call my work
Yeah.
the black screen. That there's an urgency inside my work
Right.
that has always been in my work. That I slowed down my writing a little bit, but the urgency in it was because nobody's listening to what I'm saying in Detroit.
Yeah.
I gotta write fast and I gotta talk fast and I gotta be hard. When I get on the mic, I gotta let these brothers know. I gotta cut through all this noise so they can hear me.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing, when
Yeah.
you're from this place.
Yeah. There's a question I think I wanna shoot to you. How did Detroit hip hop influence how you write?
Oh wow. Well, it influenced how I approach the mic. That's what more than it did
Wow.
how I write. I mean, I write about Detroit constantly. I've written about Detroit hip hop. I've written about Detroit, what's in the water. I've written about the luminaries. I've put all these brothers and hip hop and techno people all in my poems because I love them so much.
Mhm.
But it approached. When I went to New York in 1995, I was fearless. I was not afraid of Brooklyn. I was not afraid of Harlem. And so because we don't have and didn't have any stages, like being coming out of that scene, we had to make stages out of theaters. And I performed at hair shows, like, wherever I could read a poem. I read poems at floods, like, because I knew the DJ at floods. Like, what am I doing reading a poem at floods? I read. So when I got to New York, that mentality said, I'm going to the Apollo. When someone said, and I didn't say I'm going to the Apollo, someone said, you want to perform at the Apollo? I said, I want to perform on the top of an ice cream truck. Like, I ain't care.
Right.
I'm coming
Right.
to perform wherever there's a mic, wherever there's the people, I'm performing. And so it was, New York became this playground for me. Of course, a young Black girl from Detroit who was just trying to carve out any space for my voice to be alive or in any room. That because we didn't have poetry spots. We had like Cafe Mahogany and all that happened after I left. The only spot that was a poetry spot was the Pour Me Cafe on
Right.
Grand River. That was a hair salon. Tree owned the hair salon and turned it into a poetry spot.
Yeah.
And so even this poetry spot was connected to a hair salon. So, New York became this kind of easy target for me as a Detroiter. I went and got New York real fast, like on some and that's some Detroit hip hop, like, because nobody, like, we coming to get it.
Right.
And that's why the rappers are gritty from here. And then we got rappers, you know what I mean? Like, and so my approach, is more or less than the writing and the approach that I'm different as a poet because of Detroit hip hop, because of watching Proof. You know what I mean? Watching how his energy, I'm like that, because I'm making I got a rock and roll record, rock and roll nigga that's coming out. Like, I'm pulled towards the energy of hip hop and rock and roll as a poet. Because just the poetry doesn't contain me. There's not enough to contain me inside that space. I can be contained inside an insular world of like a poetry open mic. I always wanted more energy wise. And so, yeah.
Allison, you're gonna have to cue us as to how much time we have because I could just keep talking. I feel like I actually just want to bring up something. I want to get to the. Oh, we good? How we on time, Allison?
Stephen,
we're okay. We're almost at 8, but do what you're gonna do.
Okay, so
Okay.
I want to sort of bring up something with Jessica, and then maybe we'll take one more question. Is that good? Okay, so Jessica Caremore, one of the things that, as you write, this, like, things occur to you that sort of come up out of the, and it is the word matrix, right? The word matrix actually has the same root as matron. It means mother. And matrix has also been associated with the grid, right? And there's this moment that I love where Common just has to follow JD around Detroit. He just has to wait for JD to want to work.
Go
and
at
so
the at the hotel.
Right. Yes,
I'll be there at noon.
Right. So whatever JD wants to do, that's what Common's going to do. And so this is in 1999, spring of 1999. One day, JD says, "Oh, let's go check out a movie."
It went to the Matrix, right?
And it's the Matrix.
Yeah.
And it's about this guy who everyone is pointing to, like, "Yo, that's the guy. That's the guy. That's the one. That's the God." Right? Who knows he can see the ones and zeros in the grid.
Yes.
And Common says JD came out and he was like tongue-tied.
Yeah.
That he you know, and I obviously I can't ask James what he thought and meant, but the Matrix ended up being really evocative for me in thinking about Detroit, because in one of the last scenes of the book, I don't know if you have gotten that far yet, but you know, in one of the last scenes of the book, we land in the final chapter, we land at the Detroit Institute of the Arts in the aftermath of the Grand Bargain, right? That has saved the Diego Rivera mural and all the treasures of the DIA from the auctioneer's block. And so there is going to be a performance of Dilla's Beats by a orchestra in this space, right? And we walk into the space, and it's like you're looking at Rivera's mural where all these men are sort of being eaten by machines in a way, which was very much kind of aligned with this sort of subterranean world in the Matrix, where people have to live underground and they're working underground and they're fighting the machines. And then I just thought about Salt City. I thought about
Salt City. I haven't even got to the Salt City part of the book.
I'm sorry, I now spoiled the whole thing for you.
No, but that's Salt City all day. I love it. Oh, I can't wait. Yeah, because I stopped after he died. I got sad, so I'm gonna get to it. I promise.
But I think it ends. You know, listen, that's what a Dilla beat is, right? He takes major chords and minor chords. He takes bright and brooding, and he juxtaposes them in a JD harmony. You're all like, he'll make you feel melancholy over a banging ass beat.
Come on.
And that's why people are moved by him. So the music is so evocative.
But bringing up Salt City, because that's me. To me, JD's music is that, like, people like, what is salt? Because we're children who are literally living on top of salt, right? Salt is a healing mechanism. We mine it, we use it for healing our wounds, to pack our food, to indigenous people. Salt was so important. It's important to indigenous communities all over the world, right? But we're walking on top of this, what I call the Crystal City, the Salt City, this magical place, this spiritual place. And there's just things that you're given. I do feel like Detroit's a very, very, very special place. And I know it doesn't have all the bells and whistles, right, of a New York, right? We don't have all the same amount of restaurants and stores and whatever. But there's something about not having everything that makes you be able to have and tap into the resource that is yourself, that actually has everything that you need to create in your imagination your world. And that's what JD did, right? Like, that's what we do. We don't have it. It's not thrown on us. It's not showered on us. We don't have like the best schools, but we figure it out. All we got to find is like one teacher. You know what I mean? JD had a great mom, right? Maureen's a great mama, man. She loved her son. You know what I mean? My son, he got me. You know what I mean? He don't have he's not at Cranbrook. He's at Detroit School of Arts. I wanted him in a Detroit public school because he's been in private school until 8th grade, which I was too. And I was like, no, you need a Detroit public school experience. It's not about the best education. I'm going to give him the best education right here in the living room, home with me. But you need to go experience other things and other energies and different kind of kids and different kind of places. And that's why when Dilla wants to go to the regular Detroit public high school, you know what I mean? His mom was like, no, but I get it. I understand the importance of that balanced information. But there's like spiritual, this is a spiritually crafted book that you've written. It really is. And the grid is a spiritual place. And that's what I'm saying is like, this place may not be for everybody, but there's something special that comes out of this. And when we Detroiters and Detroit artists impact the world, something shifts. And that's why Dilla has made the global impact everywhere I've gone in the world, from Brixton to South Africa to France. My friend is super.
It's crazy, right? I mean, and I guess that's why I wanted to write it, because I wanted to try to explain it. And like you said earlier, like, language has been a problem. Language around James has been a problem. People locate his genius in things like, oh, he didn't use the timing functions on his drum machine. It's so much bigger than that.
Oh, and I don't always write down iambic pentameter, but you don't want to read next to me. Listen, you know what I'm saying? You could have a Pulitzer Prize, but you don't want to read after me.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. Like, and so, yeah, whatever. Because we take, like, Intozaki Shange has this thing she says, and I love it, that you learn this language, this thing called language.
Yeah.
You learn it, you master it, so that you can absolutely destroy it. So that's what I do. I learn that language. I can teach iambic pentameter, haiku, I know sankus. I can do all of that, and stanzas and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but guess what? I can take all of that and I can tear it all up, and I can create my own language so that people can understand, and so I can touch people in their hearts and their souls in a different way that you reading your very boring poem cannot do. Because I'm not trying to blow away people so I can get a sticker on my book, right? I have no interest in what the industry thinks about my poetry. I want to know, can I touch this person over here? Can I touch these little brothers and sisters in the favelas of Bahia? Can I do that? Oh, then this is magic. You know what I mean?
But that's the thing that keeps you writing, right? There's a difference between funding your writing and keeping the compulsion to write. You know, you absolutely are compelled to write, and it's the people on the other side of it that compel us.
That's right. That's right. And that's the difference between an artist and somebody who's just, that's how you stand out. There's a lot of people who make beats.
Yeah, well, shoot, Jessica, I'm late to the whole artist thing. I was on the other side of the desk. I was on the executive side of the desk for so long, and I've just
Rick
now
Rubin, though,
starting
man,
to.
Rick Rubin, though, like shout out to Rick Rubin, who signed my brother Saul Williams, man. He gave Saul his first deal, and he signed a poet when they wasn't signing poets. So yeah, I remember that happened too, because I was on the Eargasms record. And so
incredible.
Rick heard Eargasms. I don't want to go, nah, nah. I remember that ball and chain piece that he did that Rick liked a lot. So yeah, he's part of like the history because of that.
Even Rick called me because of this book. Like, that's crazy, because it's been a while. So let's take one more question, because I promised Allison that I would. So the question I'm taking is Stephen Ward's. Right. Who are some of Dilla's favorite producers or influenced him? In what ways can we see Dilla's influence on producers, artists today? So this is great. And this goes back to what Jessica was saying about lineage.
Yeah.
JD does not exist as an island. He is the product of many things. He's the product of, 50 years of musical code that his parents put into him. The R&B, the jazz, the opera, the gospel. Vernon Chapel, AME, was also very important in his musical development. But more immediately, he was provoked by the work of producers like Larry Smith, who did Run DMC and Houdini, but more locally, or not locally, but more proximally by Q-Tip and Pete Rock. Why were Q-Tip and Pete Rock? And by the way, I can't forget Amp Fiddler, who taught him how to use the beat.
Come on, Amp Fiddler.
I can't. Right. So it's just like, talk about a guardian angel. We could spend a whole, another hour just on Amp. But Q-Tip and Pete Rock were important because they were two of the first and most important people to really bring harmony into hip hop, the art of hip hop sampling. They were the people who reached into jazz. Like Bonita Applebum was like a record. No record, hip hop record sounded like that before Bonita Applebum. Something beautiful but banging at the same time. And you hear it with Pete Rock. They reminisce over you as well.
Yeah, come on.
So those are the fathers of James Yancey's style. But very quickly, because of his own innovations and perfections, he begins to influence not only other beat makers like High Tech, right?
Legend, man.
But D'Angelo, Questlove, Pino Palladino, Roy Hargrove. These are trained traditional musicians who are trying to replicate James Yancey's digitally created feel on traditional instruments. And what happens is he creates Fantastic Volume 2. And funny enough, he started recording Fantastic Volume 2 on February 10th, 1998. So this is also the anniversary of the start of the recording of that album. Wow. That album, with its limping, conflicted grooves, within a few years, you start to hear Music Soul Child has a hit in Dilla time. And you hear Jill Scott's album. Then you hear Flowetry. And then Marsha Ambrosius from Floetry writes and produces a song for Michael Jackson, Butterfly. So Michael Jackson's in Dilla Time, and Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam are doing that for Janet Jackson. And then Robert Glasper comes to the basement, and then Robert Glasper is bringing those rhythms into jazz. He takes them back to Brooklyn at the Up Over Jazz Cafe on Flatbush Avenue, right? So by the middle of the teens, like 2015, you have Kendrick Lamar using that motif of rhythmic conflict about to tell a story of a man who's conflicted. And then you have Hiatus Coyote in Australia doing crazy versions of, but you hear it everywhere. Anderson .Paak, the 1975, this band out of Britain, right? You hear it everywhere. It's everywhere. I mean, I can't even get to all of it, but that's, again, a reason for writing the book, is that what I started to see was people were talking about this time feel and expressing it in ways that were not only not accurate, but didn't draw it back to the source. Didn't draw it back to JD. It didn't draw it back to Detroit. So that was the unsettled anger, if you will, that propelled writing a 400-page book on James DeWitt Yancey.
It's a big old book.
It's a big old book.
Because you're not holding your own book up. I'll do it. But it get there. Thank you, Allison. And I just wanted to, I saw Common in at the Detroit Night on Broadway recently for Dominique Morisseau's play. And so he was there, and I had your book in my purse. So I pulled it out. I was like, look what I'm reading. He was like, yo, I'm reading. I said, I saw your picture with it. Did you read it? He's like, yeah, I've been reading it. And you know, I just want to give you some love and let you know that, like, that off-putting that you might, because, you know, as a white guy writing about like Black culture and hip hop and stuff, like, I, you know, respect the fact that you respect that that's what that space is. Even Common was like, yeah, I was like, who is this guy, Dan? Like, we both talked about it, and I was just like, I know, like, because as you're guarding your culture, because you're like, so many people have, you know, infiltrated it and not, you know, written about it correctly, right? Like the way a Greg Tate can. But I was like, yo, this book is the truth. It's like, so yeah, he said he's in it and he's been enjoying it. So, you know, you're getting the love from the people who you're telling our collective stories in the book. That's what's really beautiful. It's a book about JD, but it's also a book about all of us, because we're all connected to him and we all miss him dearly. So just thank you for this love letter. No, this beautiful love letter to our brother JD, John Doe. Yeah, because it is gonna be Dilla time forever.
Yeah. And it's a love letter to Detroit too.
It
so
is.
You know, just thank you, Detroit, for, you know, in the many ways that I am an outsider. The welcome has been, you know, very humbling, actually humbling. And you know, it's just thank you very much.
You did your job though, so that's what, you know. We like people who do their job.
Well, that's
work ethic. This is a work ethic.
So I want to thank everybody for hanging in with us for this event. Thank you, Dan, for this book. Don't take it from me. On the back of the book, Greg Tate, Jeff Chang, Questlove, Dreamhampton, you know, gives you all these wonderful reasons to read this book. And I wanted to thank FSG for the opportunity. Today is the sunset day for Dilla. And so everything, first I was feeling a little sad, but then I got very happy because it's been such a whirlwind from the very release day until now. And I just want everyone to know that Dilla Time is available at Source Booksellers, in store and online, and any independent bookstore will get you a copy, I'm sure. Please read the whole book because every page is a delight.
And y'all got copies in store right now?
Yes.
See, people are looking for them. So go to Source Booksellers. That, you know, even if you have to drive to Detroit from New York, it's worth it. If you haven't made the pilgrimage,
we'll ship it.
Oh yeah, you can ship too. Yeah, you can do that too.
They don't gotta drive.
But I'm also trying to encourage the tourism industry as well. So, you know, get it all in there.
Yes, and please come when the time is safe, and we'll just start celebrating one more time.
All right, you know I will. Thank you.
And thank you for having me be a part of this. I really, really appreciate
Thank
you.
you, Jessica.
Jessica, I mean, this is your world. I'm visiting. This is your
Yeah,
world.
I appreciate you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. All right.